What's up? What's happening? Welcome in on a Monday edition of the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Anthony, there's nothing like looking at yourself in the camera and going, oh my God, bro, you need a haircut. And that's where I'm at right now. I keep refreshing my barber's page. I got two different locations I can go to. And neither one of them has an availability. And I'm like, I need it bad.
I got to tell you something, Greg.
What's that?
You need a haircut.
Thanks. I'll shave when I get the haircut. I'm just a scruffy winterized individual right now.
You're warm.
Long hair. I'm not. I'm actually kind of cold. I got some tea right here.
Okay.
I'm a little scared of the tea though, because I'm like, how much caffeine is in this? I wish we had some herbal tea floating around.
I thought it was coffee for a second.
No, this is tea. I haven't taken a sip yet. Let's see. It's got some honey in it. Let's see if it's terrible.
Craig might lose a taste bud.
Oh no, that's actually not that bad. That's pretty good. I wish I put a little bit more honey in, but like, so I'll let Anthony do the show. I'm going to sip some tea. I'm going to have tea telling.
So I will narrate us watching you drink tea.
No, let's not do that. Commanders had a bye week, but I think we should still do a 1st and 10. Let's go around the NFL. Not around the NFL. We'll do that at 5:30. Hit every game. I'll give you some analysis, but 10 takeaways to start the show? What an original idea. Commanders on a bye? We're not. Let's get to it.
It's time to get the breakdown started. 1, 2, 3. First up, 10 observations.
And just boom, put him right on the ground.
It's 1st and 10.
First and foremost,
Number 1.
holy crap, Rams-Bills. Oh my God. That game was insane. It had everything but good defense. Let's start off with Puka Nacua, who is just one of the most special players that we have in the league. And like toughness, body control, intelligence, reliability, versatility, not to mention the level that he competes at, pretty unmatched in the NFL. And again, that's not to say there aren't other players with tremendous combinations of abilities, but to do the stuff that he does week in, week out, with the consistency, and he blocks his face off, and you can hand him the ball, and like he always is the guy in the clutch. Like, what a player. And he's in his second year. He's like a 5th round pick. And I know part of that 5th round pickness was a slower 40 time, but there's also some injury stuff. So it's not like you look at his college resume and you're like, how did this dude go? But man, you look at his college resume and it seems odd that he lasted as long as he did, that the upside wasn't worth it because he just produced and he carried the ball and did all that stuff in college too. So Puka yesterday, 5 rushes, 16 yards, but he has the touchdown late. Nacua also has 12 catches for 162 on 14 targets. Volume and efficiency. Just an incredible day. And Matthew Stafford, that dude, when he's on a heater, his heaters are still as hot as anybody. 23 of 30, 322 touchdowns. He's pushing the ball down the field. Throwing from different arm angles. And
Number 2.
the most interesting thing from that game, besides the Rams win, which we'll come back to in a second, might be the fact that the losing quarterback helped his MVP case. In fact, I think after this weekend, Josh Allen is sitting in the driver's seat for NFL MVP. And by the way, he's got a huge test coming up because they face Detroit next. But, oh my God, Josh Allen yesterday. First player in NFL history with 3 passing, 3 rushing touchdowns in a single game. The loss, it's not on him. What more could that dude have done? They got a punt blocked. And that was kind of the difference in the game. McDermott makes some calls late, / the OC makes some calls late that I don't love. I know Josh Allen is Josh Allen, and he eventually gets in the final touchdown on a sneak. But considering the clock situation, you can't burn a timeout. You're like a yard and a half, 2 away. I probably am not running a quarterback sneak there at the end of the game and then having to burn a timeout if I don't get in. I'm probably putting him on the run and saying, hey, if you have an alley, run it. If you can get an easy throw it. I might even try to run QB power or like pop pass or something like that. But I'm not running a QB sneak that involves a gigantic pile. Because also if I run a play that's a run, I want to be able to at least unpile and get everybody back quickly and call 2 plays in the huddle. Even if it's like the second one's a QB sneak. Hey, as long as we get a positive game, we're going to QB sneak on the second one. okay, fine. Can we get up and down in 15 seconds if we don't get in? They didn't. They called a timeout, onside kick, game is over. And it's extra over when you only have 9 players on the field for the last play, which they did, which is why they couldn't get a good punt block or a punt return. That said, Allen was just insane yesterday, and to watch him operate at that level is just spectacular, and I do think this is the year he might finally get his MVP.
Number 3.
As far as the Commanders go, the Rams win was actually kind of bad for them. The more NFC West teams that poke around, the harder it is for Washington in terms of their competition. Now, the good news is that Washington is in control of its own destiny. They went out, they're in. They go 3-1, they're probably in. They go 2-2, they very well still might be in because they're going to wind up holding tiebreakers over a lot of the relevant teams. And they obviously have a 1-game lead already on LA, on Arizona, on one or more game lead, I should say, because they have 2 on Arizona, which is effectively 3 because they have a head-to-head tiebreaker. They have a 2 on San Francisco, and then they have the 1 on LA plus the tiebreaker, so it's kind of effectively 2. But yesterday, the best-case scenario for Washington would have been a Seahawks win, which happened over Arizona. We'll get back to them a little bit later in 1st and 10. And a Rams loss, because that basically would have given Seattle the division. They would have had a 2-game lead with 4 to go. And while Seattle does have a very tough schedule remaining, Packers, Vikings, Bears, and Rams at Chicago, at LA to finish, that's a big enough lead that they should have been okay. For the Rams remaining, they're at San Francisco on Thursday night. And then they get the Jets at New York, so they have to go across the country, and that kind of sucks. But all in all, like, congrats, you get the Jets. And then they face Arizona and Seattle. So the way the playoff picture sits right now, Washington is definitely in a really good spot, especially when you add in schedules. Now you got to still go out and win, and we're going to talk a little bit more about their next opponent a little bit in a second. But right now, as things sit, Washington is the 7 seed. They are followed by the Rams in 8th, the Falcons, who lost, and the Commanders play. So head-to-head, you can, if they don't just collapse in the next 2 weeks, you can definitely knock them out in that Week 17 matchup. And then you got Arizona, San Francisco, and then, like, the next team is Dallas. So, obviously, look, if Dallas has gotten their way back into it, it's because they're playing Washington for that final spot in Week 18, and Washington will have control over that. But we're not talking about a bunch of winning football teams here down the stretch that they are able to, or there are a bunch of good teams that are really threatening here. It's really LA, maybe Arizona, but probably it's just LA, Washington for that final spot, unless LA leapfrogs Seattle, and then Seattle can get back into the mix. As for the rest of the day in the NFL, we will get to some more of the biggest takeaways, including a scare in Philadelphia. That's next as we continue 1st and 10. Then, still to come here on the Hoffman Show, we're going to talk to an ESPN insider about the Juan Soto deal at 5 o'clock. Michael Phillips going to join us at 4:30 today, talk a little bit more Commanders as they get back to work post-bye. Plus, you'll hear from Dan Quinn coming up in our Pick 6 at 6. It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980, where you can see my hair in need of haircut. Hopefully, Anthony, hopefully I don't look too congested or anything either. Hopefully I don't sound too bad.
Nah, you don't sound too bad.
Just the temperature, man, when it dropped and then it comes back up a little bit and you just got that, like, you're just all in here.
Yep, that's me too, man.
It's it's everybody. But when you talk for a living, it's extra rough. Just ask Tom Brady.
Oh, yeah, you heard it?
Yeah, it was not good.
Nah.
Normally Brady's bad because he's not that good at that job. And like, even yesterday, which was like, everyone was like, oh, that was Brady's best broadcast outside of the voice stuff. You can just tell, like, he doesn't have the insight other guys do who get to go to these production meetings. You realize how good I could be at that job if I got to talk to the offensive coordinator in a situation where he actually, like, told me stuff on Friday?
Yeah.
Like, now imagine how good you'd be if you were a former NFL player and then you got that access. Because that's the standard. And then instead, Tom Brady's just like, yeah, I mean, I watched some tape, but I didn't get to talk to anybody. It's ridiculous. I don't need to get on that tangent right now. We got enough other things to get to. We have a final 6 bullet points in our first and 10. We're going around the NFL today, first and 10 style. Some of the most interesting observations, things to watch for from the weekend because, well, the Commanders had their bye week.
Number 4.
Game of the day, arguably, wound up being, well, actually, no. Let's chill out for a second. Game of the day was obviously Bills and Rams. But another really interesting, maybe game of the early window was the Eagles-Panthers game, as the Panthers just kept sticking around. And that's kind of who they've been for the last month or so. Bryce Young continuing to play way better, and he puts up a ball late to Xavier Legette. Legette? I think he's going with Legette now. The country is Xavier Legette. You know that's what he sounds like, right?
Oh, he sounds worse than that, correct?
I don't even know if I can do his voice.
Exactly.
I'm going to need to practice to do that deal. See, you gotta it's almost like you got to go into the Cajun, so you got to get that there alligator. And then you're downhill, but his voice is so deep that, yeah. Xavier Legette. Do you see what he did for his Thanksgiving?
You talking about, yeah.
He was real happy that he was going to have some raccoon.
No, he did.
Yeah, no, that's a real quote. Search Xavier Legette raccoon.
Raccoon?
Oh, now I got to find it. Now we can't do this
really
to people. We're really going to do this just in the middle of this segment. Xavier Legette raccoon. Videos.
I'm looking at him differently.
This Saturday today, man, it's gonna be that coon, man. My cousin them, they called me last night, told me they killed the coon 2 days ago. They took the clothes off and everything, washed them up. Yeah, we about to dive into that today, man.
Come on, man. Shout out to you, man. Happy Thanksgiving, brother.
Happy Thanksgiving, dog.
That coon, man.
They took the clothes off it and everything, which is like they prepared it to eat. That's the country's guy in the NFL.
Are you eating any coon?
No.
Okay.
No, that's not. It's not on the. Was not on the Hoffman Thanksgiving menu, and will not be on the Hoffman menu for any reason other than I've gotten to a point in my life where I need to eat it to survive.
I hope you never get there.
Same. But it wasn't raccoon skin that Xavier Legette was worried about on Sunday. No, it was pig skin. See what we did? We brought it back, Anthony, and he had a drop late. On what was a pretty darn good ball by Bryce Young. Just stepped up. Legette's wide open. Young, you wish you would have put it right on him. But I think the bigger point is, like, one, the Eagles are happy to survive that game. The way that Carolina's been playing. And they found out, like, why this Carolina team is all of a sudden a pain in the butt for everybody. And imagine next year if they can play like this with some more talent on the field. I mean, Adam Thielen is out there just saving Bryce Young, or saving the offense in key situation after key situation. Adam Thielen is not prime Adam Thielen anymore, to say the least. But I think the revival of Bryce Young and his, like, if you're Carolina, you're no longer, I want to say you're not worried about quarterback long term, but, like, next year, Bryce Young's your quarterback. And the fact that 7 weeks ago, we definitely couldn't say that it was like, oh man, what are they going to do at quarterback next year? This is a bad quarterback draft. They just spent the number 1 pick on him 2 years ago, or last year by the time the draft rolls around 2 years ago. Do you roll with it? Do you bring in a veteran competition and give him one more shot? Like, what do you do? Do you bring in like a Sam Darnold? I mean, Sam Darnold's been in Carolina before. Didn't go very well. Like, what do you do? And now the answer is you continue to support Bryce Young with whether it's Andy Dalton or another veteran backup, and you play Bryce Young and see if he can develop into someone that worth 2 years from now is worth paying. And I think that's really exciting for Carolina as they hopefully can finally get on the right path with their rebuild. Okay, that one took a detour. Let's see where this one goes.
Number 5.
New York, boo York. Ugh. The Jets will miss the playoffs for the 14th straight season. This is the longest streak in sports. The Giants are worse than the Jets. We are in an era where discipline and patience and just expertise rule in team building. CBAs and all that kind of stuff are more complicated than ever. There's all this data and information available, so it's less like, oh, I got a scout who trusts his gut. And like that used to be worth a lot and still is worth a lot, but not when a bunch of other teams have a bunch of nerds who can dive through formulas and numbers and be like, hey, this is a red flag. What do we see? And then the great teams combine the nerds, a term I'm using affectionately, and the data with what they see. And the last part of it is, what you scout in terms of a human being. This is what Adam Peters always talks about. And having that guy who doesn't necessarily have a gut, but has a relationship and getting that all together. And the Jets and the Giants just don't seem to operate that way. And the New York sports fan, ethos, the New York sports fan way of being a sports fan, where you're just impatient all the time, want to fire everyone all the time, everyone sucks, you're yelling, you're calling sports talk radio and the whole deal, that's got to make it impossible to feel like you can be patient. And for both these teams, it's just time to start from scratch with good plans and smart people in charge. And the thing is, though, if I was a smart person, I don't know that I'd want to work at either organization. I 100% would not want to work for the Jets. I could be convinced to work for the Giants, 0% chance. I work for the Jets, and they haven't had any good hires in the last decade, either one of them. So, yikes.
Number 6.
More importantly, in terms of the Giants-Saints game for the Commanders, in case you missed it at the end of this game yesterday, Derek Carr might have a broken hand, and that would almost certainly mean he's out this weekend. It's his non-throwing hand, but you still have to be able to catch the snap and handle the ball and do all that stuff. I don't think you can do that stuff with a cast on. I don't think that a doctor would say, hey, you can risk getting hit. If it's broken, it needs to be in place and set. And so the Saints' only backup quarterback is Jake Haener. What the kid out of South Carolina, Spencer Rattler, is injured. Taysom Hill went on IR, is out for the year with an ACL. So it could be the Jake Haener show for the Saints in New Orleans, with Marshawn Lattimore coming in there ready to make his Commanders debut and a Commanders defense fresh off a bye. And that suddenly puts the Saints, as if they weren't already, but it definitively puts the Saints in the profile of team that the Commanders have absolutely crushed this season. And they should go do that again. Go down to New Orleans, take care of your business, have a quick drink and come on back. Or probably just get on the plane and come on back. You got a pretty big one against the Eagles the week after.
Number 7.
It was so nice of the Vikings to welcome Kirk back and let him say, no, hey, you can throw to us. You can throw to the purple jerseys again if it makes you feel back at home. And he did twice. 2 pretty big picks for Cousins as his interception streak over the last couple of weeks reaches just absurd levels. But the bigger issue, I think, for the Falcons is the lack of pass rush, which has been an issue for them all season long, and the utter ineptitude of the secondary at times. Just complete and total coverage breakdowns. And when Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison are hanging around, that ain't going to work. That's how you get 42 points dropped on you. And you need to have not just not bust, but you need to have outstanding communication. And there's times in the red zone where a half step here, a half step there is what Justin Jefferson needs to get open. And the thing is, because Darnold is coached up to just go and hunt Justin Jefferson whenever he possibly can, if you make any mistake on Jefferson, it's going to be noticed. And Darnold's going to rip him the ball. And Darnold did a good job of that yesterday. As for Atlanta, they'll need to catch Tampa to win the NFC South to probably get into the playoffs, which is kind of embarrassing considering how much talent they have on their roster. All right, 3 quick ones on the way out.
Number 8.
Number 8, ban the Tennessee Titans. Anthony, tomorrow when we do our tier rankings, the Titans belong in actual hell with the Jets and the Giants. They lost 10-6 to Mac Jones and the Jags.
And they got to the red zone the last 2 drives.
Ban the Tennessee Titans.
Number 9.
That is number 8. Number 9, back to the Seahawks real quick, an actual good team. If they can suddenly run the ball, that makes them pretty dangerous. Geno Smith has had to do everything for this team, and I will admit, as a longtime Geno Smith hater, Geno Smith's a pretty good quarterback. Top half of the league, at least. If not, pushing the back half of the top 10. And he's had to do everything for this team. And if they can all of a sudden run the ball, and they did yesterday, ran for almost $150, I believe it was, or Charbonnet ran for almost $150. That opens up a lot of play action and a lot of other things for them. And for the Seahawks, they've tried all kinds of stuff in the run game. Find a couple of runs you like, do those, play action off of them. You can do this, Seattle. You should be good. You've got a lead. Go in the NFC West. Oh, their schedule's a nightmare. Sorry, that's going to be tough. But at least, hey, if they figure that out, then they've got a much better shot. And last but not least,
Number 10.
there's a 100% chance that someone on the Chiefs made a deal with the devil. A walk-off doink? I mean, how many more wacky ways are they going to win a one-score game? They've, I think, won 15 one-score games in a row, which is in part because Patrick Mahomes manages those situations better than anyone. He always finds the throw, always will make the scramble. He is so good in those situations. But a walk-off doink? Come on. Script writers are getting a little crazy.
Man, they've done it in every way imaginable. A blocked field goal, a toe being on the line. It's getting ridiculous, Craig. It is getting ridiculous.
They've won so many games by inches. And it's a game of inches. It's not supposed to be a game of inches this often. Wild.
I mean, didn't the Vikings have a season like that where they just kept winning one
They
score
did.
game, one
They
score
did.
game,
It was
and then they lose?
2021, and then they lost to the Giants and Daniel Jones in the playoffs.
Uh-oh.
So, I think I feel a little differently about the Chiefs because they're the Chiefs and they're the 2-time defending champions. But still, it's one of the worst, December one-loss football teams we've ever seen. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. They've won. They're on track for home field advantage, and if they get it, and then they figure something out in the playoffs, which they have the last couple of years, their defense locks in, their offense locks in. They could very well wind up lifting Lombardi again, in which case next year they shouldn't even have to play the regular season. Just let's go to the playoffs and see what happens because this all feels like a giant facade. A giant, I won't say waste of time, but I don't know. Just nothing will matter. We just put the Chiefs, as long as Mahomes is healthy, in prime contenders, and they just get to live there. All right, it's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. When we get back, Michael Phillips joins us here on the Team 980 with a look ahead at the Commanders' final month of their season. It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. And joining us now, typically it's 5 o'clock on Mondays, but with the bye week, we're shifting things around a little bit. And at 5 o'clock, we're going to have one of ESPN's MLB insiders on the show to talk about the Juan Soto deal. So right now at 4:30, it's our pleasure to welcome in Michael Phillips. Michael, how was your bye week weekend?
I mean, the best place to be is on the other side of the bye week. Everybody's refreshed. Everybody feels good. I'm the same. You know, you can move me half an hour either way. Doesn't matter. I'm ready to go, ready to hit somebody.
Anybody in particular?
No, I'd probably one of the Saints, ideally, but I don't think they're going to put me in, Craig. I didn't make the too deep this week. Didn't last week either. It's not looking great at the moment.
Yeah. The Saints need a quarterback.
No, that sounds physically punishing. That doesn't sound like my kind of thing. I'll probably stick with my press box perch or my television perch this weekend. I feel bad for whoever ends up in that spot. That's not going to be pretty.
His name is Jake Haener, Michael. Jake Haener.
My Jake Haener file is woefully empty, Craig.
That is actually the correct answer. Michael, you've won the game. Just full on, Michael. You've won the game! Hey! Okay. Michael, I wanna go through with you an exercise that I did with Dan Pizzuta on the show last week. Dan joins us on Thursdays from the 33rd team. He's very, very smart. I want to talk about like the things that we're confident in and the things that we have concern about going into this final 4-game stretch of the regular season. So if you think of the thing for the Commanders that you are most confident in, offensively, defensively, otherwise, what is it specific to 2024 in these final 4 games?
I feel really good about number 5, man. I just feel like if you give Jaden the ball in a key situation, he's going to deliver. And there's been, bumps in the road, obviously, and there's been games he wants back. But I just think the totality of his season says when there's a close game, you want him to have the ball, and he's going to make something happen. I say that's such a luxury, right, that, you don't have to be leading by 2 scores. And, some of these teams with the Chargers stat last night, I think they've lost their last 10 3-point or less games. That's not him. Jaden gets the job done in the clutch, and I think that's just such a huge luxury to have.
I totally agree with that. I think that his ability to just figure out how to make plays is something that is unteachable. It's uncoachable. It's unschemable. Yeah. You just, no matter what the play call is, he'll figure it out. One of the things that I would say I'm not worried about, but I hope that changes in this final month is I hope they put the ball in his hands more in key situations. And specifically, what I'm talking about is getting more aggressive on 4th down calls. I go back to the Thursday night game where Dan Campbell's just like, my offense is my best unit. Bleep it, I'm winning the game with my offense. And he did. And he probably had already won the game with his offense, and he could have just kicked the field goal, and then his defense not having to give up 40 seconds, no timeout situation. I hope your defense can do that. But he was like, I can end this game with my offense with one more first down and a couple of yards, and this is who we are, and we're going to do it. And I hope that Dan Quinn gets to that point. Do you think that that is also something that is going to need to happen for them to take the next step and beat someone like, I don't know, the Lions?
Yeah, or the Eagles in 2 weeks, right? Would be a perfect example of that, where you can't beat the Eagles conservatively. That's not how you're going to win that game. You're going to have to be aggressive. And I do think earlier in the season there was a lot of coaching to the future, right? Coaching to hey, we're not going to let these things get out of hand. We're going to manage the workload, manage the situations that, even looking back to that Baltimore game, right? Even if we lose, we're going to make sure we lose close and nobody hangs their heads, and it's a valiant effort. It's a different team now, and it's a different situation coming out of the bye. They have the chance to make the playoffs. We can talk about the dream scenario, them catching the Packers and being the 6th seed, which would give them a winnable playoff game on top of all that. But even if they're just the 7th seed, if you're a playoff team, you're a team that needs to take chances and believe in yourselves because you got there for a reason.
Yeah, 100%. As for the defense, what kind of difference do you think Marshawn Lattimore realistically makes for them?
Yeah, I'm excited to find out, right? That's a bad answer when you dial an expert and ask him that question. But I think I'm curious what Joe Witt's going to do with everybody else, because this is a group that I don't think would be accused of being over-talented, but has certainly produced well over the last few weeks. Everybody's fallen into a nice rhythm and kind of found their spot, and St. Juice has settled down and had a few fewer penalties. Igbenogany, I think, has done well, and obviously Sanders still is one of the breakout stars of the season. Everybody sees that he's going to have a really bright future. So now you add in maybe the most talented player from day one, right? I think he's more talented than any of the three. What do you do with that? How do you move those chess pieces so that everybody gets better? Not just, hey, we got one matchup that's better each game, but we made everybody else better down the line as well. And I don't know what the answer to that is, but I'm excited to see what they cook up this weekend.
No, I'm with you, and I think that I'm even excited for another element, which is like schematically, what do they do? It seems like Joe would like to play more man-to-man. I think we know that based off of his history and their history, they being he and Dan. And so now you have a guy that you can trust there where you can put safety help on the other side without needing safety help on both sides and thus losing players elsewhere. And I just think that then, that extra player can be really helpful in your pass rush, for instance. And I just think there's a trickle down, not to mention what do they do with everybody else, and whether that's Juice still on the outside with a sprinkling of Michael Davis and Sanders still inside. Is it Sanders still outside? Like, I think that is something that they're probably not going to tell us on Thursday, or Dan will not tell us on Wednesday or Friday, but it's something that we will obviously find out in some dose this weekend, even if the dosage changes week to week, which I also think is a possibility.
Yeah, a lot of people want Sanders still going back inside, and I understand why. I don't know that that's going to be the week one move. I think they're going to ease into that, make sure they know what they got. You don't want to. He's really good, but he's also a rookie. You don't want to be jerking him around and having him. You're this position. Learn this playbook. Learn this guy. Learn these tendencies. I think you want to bake in some consistency there, and I think they will. So I would caution against expecting major adjustments this weekend, but I think if all goes smoothly, you'll see those over the next few weeks as they start to feel comfortable with what they got.
All right, ready for a good sports talk radio question on the way out, and then we're going to take I think we should take some calls on this after we get Michael's answer. So if people want to listen to the question, and then you should listen to Michael's answer too, but then hit us up at 301-230-0980. The most important non-Jaden Daniels player for the rest of the season is blank.
Ooh, I like that. I want to say I'm not deliberately disrespecting the defense because they're important. They're by some accounts as much as half of a football game. Frankie Louvu's the man, so I just want to say that. But I think the answer is Tyler Biotish. I just think everything offensively is really important right now and kind of young and unstable and unsettled. And there's been such a huge difference when he's been out of games briefly. He hasn't missed the whole game, but he's missed series. And there's a noticeable drop-off in production when he's not out there. I think he's had a real calming and coaching influence on this offensive line. And you think about how you're going to win football games into January, it's going to have to be on the ground, and we'll see what running backs they have available. But the better that offensive line is, the less it matters which running backs you have available, and the easier it is for Jaden as well. I just think he's had a phenomenal impact on the season, and I think that if you keep him at his best and fresh and healthy, that's good for everybody. And on defense, Lulu's been spectacular. I mean, he's been great. But I think you also looked at maybe some of the bit pieces on the edge, your Dorrance Armstrongs of the world, where you say, hey, that getting production there can be really, really crucial late in seasons.
No doubt about it. Michael Phillips with us here on the Hoffman Show. We'll take your calls next on that answer. And then, Michael, we will talk to you post-Saints game next Monday.
I will look forward to it and enjoy the Juan Soto conversation because, that's insane to me.
Yes, it's a lot of years. It's a lot of money.
A lot of years.
A lot of years and a lot of money. And it'll be fun in 15 years, Michael, when he's 40 and retired, to look back and be like, wow, that Soto contract he got back in 2024 was cheap because so-and-so junior's making $3 billion. Because that feels like the direction that we're going.
But inflation will have hit then, so it'll settle in a little easier.
So some would argue some inflation might have hit in recent times, but we're not going to get into that because that's a different show. I probably already touched the third rail. Zap. Okay, they're shutting me off now. Michael, thank you.
Later.
All right, it's Michael Phillips. You can catch his show 10 a.m. to noon on 910 The Fan in Richmond. You're like, but I live here. Good news for you. The free Odyssey app is anywhere your smartphone is. Just download it for free in the Apple App Store, Google Play, wherever, and then you can listen to all of our stations nationwide, including Michael's show from 10 a.m. to noon. That is the question we're going to attack next. Who is the most important commander not named Jaden Daniels for the rest of the 2024 season? 301-230-0980. Let's see. We got one of ESPN's Major League Baseball insiders joining us at 5 o'clock to talk about the Juan Soto deal. Right now, though, taking some calls, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980 with a simple Commanders question. Who is the most important Washington Commander for the rest of the 2024 season, not named Jaden Daniels? Let's actually go straight to the phones here because I think Timothy has the same answer that I do. Timothy, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Craig, what's going on?
What's up, dude? Who you got?
I got Brian Robinson Jr. You look at, was it the Ravens and Steelers game? I feel like if he's in either of those games, we win those games. Like he's one of the biggest pieces of our offense, like outside of Jaden and Terry. Like we look like a completely different game, completely different team with him in the game, and obviously Cliff kind of calls a different offense with him in the game. So I think we need B-Rob to be B-Rob, and we need him on the field.
I 100% agree. Timothy, thanks for the call. And I just think that when you add up how their offense opens up with him, with the actual production in terms of yardage, the hidden yardage he gets on just basic, simple, like, hey, it's a 2-yard carry. Oh, actually, it's 4 because he fell forward or he wiggled through for another couple yards in a way that the other backs don't. The attention he draws, especially in the zone read game, where if Jaden is, reading out a defender and that, the defender is like, do I go after Brian Robinson or do I wait for Jaden? You probably go after Robinson a lot more often. Like the way defenses coach that during the week, right? Like that's a game plan decision. I think most of the time, or against a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL, that they're not even bothering to run zone read, I guess, unless they're Lamar or Josh Allen, whatever. But you're just gonna be like, let's go tackle the running back. If it's Lamar, then you're like, okay, well let's sit on Lamar. Well, this year it's different because he has Derrick Henry, and now that is lethal. There is no good option, and that's kind of what Washington is when Robinson is back there. And Robinson's not Henry, but he's been incredible. And so when it's Austin Eckler, who's obviously going to be out for maybe the entire rest of the season, but certainly a couple games here, or Chris Rodriguez or anybody else, you just sit on Jaden. Now, Jaden can pull it as a runner, and he's far more dangerous because that defender on the edge, that's the read guy, is really 100% fully committed to Robinson in a way he's not against other backs. I do think Chris Rodriguez makes it a little bit more intriguing of, like, could the answer be like Terry? Because C-Rod has been really good in specific stuff, but he's just not as complete of a back. Because I think that's the other thing that I noticed specifically in the last game against, oh, God, who's the last team they played, Anthony? Why am I blanking?
The last team they played, the Titans.
Oh, that's right. It was Tennessee. What a forgettable. That's right. I banned them in the first segment. I'm going to say that's why I couldn't think of them. B-Rob in pass protection was fantastic in that game. And that's somewhere where, like, Chris Rodriguez struggles a little bit. And so the completeness of B-Rob as a back, where you can throw with him on the field, you can run with him on the field, you can throw it to him, he can be a pass protector, all that stuff. Check down guy. There was a check down to him in the last game, which hasn't been a big part of what Jaden's done this year, but it was last game. At least on one play, he did it. I think that makes Brian Robinson, even above Terry McLaurin, the number one most important guy for the Commanders, not named Jaden Daniels, because of what he does for literally everyone else on that offense. Anthony, do you agree with that? Would you go Terry? Would you go someone else?
I think B-Rob is a good choice, but when I think about winning games, I always think about the defense. I think defensively, we're going to need to be able to get stops. We're going to be able to, turn over the ball. And that was one thing Dan Quinn mentioned earlier today, where he talked about what he wanted to be better down the second stretch or the last 4 games of the season. He talked about the turnover margin. And I think defensively, if we're going to go out there and win games, I think it has to be somebody that's on the defensive side of the ball So me personally, I would go with Frankie Louvu as the most important person down the stretch of the season. I think he's been our biggest and best free agent acquisition, and one of the bright spots on the defensive side of the ball. And I think if we're going to win games, it's going to come with the help of the defense.
I mean, the defense obviously has to play their part. I just don't know that any individual piece is as important as B-Rob is to the offense. And I also think B-Rob helps the defense. Like, their ability to stay on the field and get first downs is directly correlated to, and correlation and causation to Brian Robinson's availability. Now, could you say the pass rush without Frankie Louvu is has so little teeth that they would be giving up a lot more stuff, or they would have to take bodies out of coverage to generate more pressure or whatever? I think you can make an argument for Frankie Louvu for sure. I think you could definitely argue he's the most important guy on the defense. Trying to think of who else I might make that argument for. I mean, Bobby's obviously really important, but I think Luvu's probably more important. Chin has become essential to what they do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if Lattimore changes the dynamic of who they are, he could wind up being that. The defensive tackles are rotating a ton, but like if Payne all of a sudden was a monster, like that would elevate this defense in a different way. But I think with kind of who they've been, the number one guy defensively would be Louvu. And I think the question is, like, where do the turnovers come from? And that's where, like, a guy like Quan becomes really interesting. Because they haven't, like, obviously the corners, if they could ball hawk, that would be great. But also, can the safeties get involved? And Quan's forced a couple of fumbles this year, but they got to recover them. And so, I don't know, it's interesting. Dorrance Armstrong, I think when he plays really well out on the edge, like, you see how different they are when he makes, like, a big play and all of a sudden team's behind the chains. Fowler's had a big year, but Luvu's probably the right answer in terms of the defense. I think you're probably on for that.
Yeah.
We can get back to this more tomorrow, and we'll also talk about this through a slightly different lens. We made a list in the preseason about the Commanders' 10 most important players. Now that we're at the bye with 4 games to go, let's revisit that list. So we'll do that tomorrow here on the Hoffman Show. Coming up next, though, biggest story in sports, and today, that is former National Juan Soto becoming a Met. Ugh. We'll talk about it with an ESPN MLB insider next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And at 5 o'clock each and every afternoon, we try to give you some insight on the top story of the day. And today, it's that a former National has signed somewhere else that you're going to see him a lot for a whole lot of money. Let's get into it.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
Joining us to discuss Juan Soto's record-breaking 15-year contract, it is Kylie McDaniel from ESPN. He's one of their Major League Baseball's insiders. He's worked in some front offices. He's got a great focus and expertise when it comes to free agency and this whole process and everything that we're watching going down. So we welcome Kylie to the show now. Kylie, what's up, man? How are you?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure, although I will say, as someone who covers DC sports and was very sad when Juan Soto left, understood it at the time, but seeing how the story played out, I think I look back on it, Kylie, and I'm like, man, I know they got a lot of prospects and a lot of great players, but from the Washington side of it, you're like, they could have gotten him for how much a couple years ago, and his market now is this. What was your first reaction from like someone who's in the sport and focuses on these things all the time? What was your first reaction when you saw where he went and for how much money and for how long?
Was surprised. Obviously the storyline going into this offseason is that Scott Boras, obviously the most popular, most well-known agent in sports, I would imagine, certainly in baseball, had a really bad offseason last year. He had the group of guys known as the Boras Four, who were four guys that weren't signed into late February into March. All of them underperformed expectations. And if you sort of compare to the literal projections that were very accurate, including mine last year, all of those guys underperformed by like tens of millions, in some cases almost $100 million worth of underperformance. And it seemed consistent that the reason was that Boras thought there was going to be more money the longer he waited, which he generally has succeeded by doing that, but does it with one or two guys to get a little bit of more money out when there's already money ready to be spent. And last year there was the sort of complication of all of the local TV deals going down or maybe going down. Like that uncertainty created some hesitancy from teams. And then this offseason, he has an even better class coming into the offseason where he's got, 6 of the top 8 guys in free agency. Sorry, 5 of the top 8, and then 6 of the top 11. So he's got all kinds of power. He's getting all the information because he represents hitters, pitchers all around. And then Soto is the guy that has a chance to set a new record for Boras. His biggest contract is actually Bryce Harper's from, I think it's 5 years ago. He hasn't done another deal bigger than that. And I think there's been 5 since then that are bigger than Harper. So this was his chance to sort of assert himself. And so the expectations were then, well, he's got all these marks he wants to beat. He wants to beat the Ohtani deferral adjusted numbers. He wants to get 12 years. He wants to be $500 million, and I think going into the offseason, as the postseason ended, the expectation was he'll get roughly 12-ish years. He'll get roughly 600, maybe 650. If he gets above that, he'll have to have a ton of deferrals. And then he beat that expectation by over $100 million with no deferrals. He got an opt-out. He got to stay in New York. He got some escalators. Like he basically hit a home run on every single front after having the worst offseason of his whole career. And then obviously Soto turned down $440 million a few years ago. And if you then take out what he made since turning down that deal, it was basically 13 years for $380, and he ended up signing for 15 and $765. He almost got twice as much money by just waiting 2.5 years. So it not only was dumbfounding because it's a giant number, but just relative to expectations from the day before or week before it was going to happen, just everything was completely blown out of the water.
So is it just that Soto's 25, and typically like when guys hit the market like this, they're a little bit older? He started in the majors so young. He had so much success so early. Whatever the other reasons are that he's available because he's really just starting the prime of his career, which is grotesque considering how good he is. Why is it that Soto was able to do that when no other player has gotten what he's got, no deferrals, the whole deal?
So there's two reasons. One is if you think of like when the book Moneyball came out, so almost 20 years ago, that was the beginning of teams realizing that they were overpaying for guys that don't play a lot of defense, that aren't that athletic, that had, a good career season hitting home runs, but that those guys tend to age very poorly because they're relying on physical tools like strength that can fall off dramatically by the late 20s. And so a lot of teams have made that adjustment, the majority of teams, saying that sluggers that play on the corners that are older, especially right-handed ones, Pete Alonso being a perfect example of that, those are the guys you don't want to invest in. Those guys in like relievers. That was like the main targets of the concept of Moneyball when it comes to free agency and spending money. The thing that became even more real is because the TV deals, the revenues, all that stuff keeps going up. These teams have more and more money to spend, but they don't want to spend it on the best players when they are, we'll use Pete Alonso as an example, 30 plus and corner hitters that aren't going to age well. And then all of the good young players that everybody wants they're cost controlled through their first 6 years. So who do you spend your money on? And we saw last year with Yamamoto when the Dodgers gave him over $300 million. Multiple teams offered him $300 million. Teams that don't normally offer that kind of money, like the Red Sox, Soto offers you, similar to Manny Machado and Bryce Harper, that free agent in his mid-20s doesn't really exist. So the multiplier of what you would pay for wins, there's like sort of a formula you can use with a normal free agent, like Willie Adames would be a normal example, a 29-year-old shortstop that just had a really good season, will probably move to third base at some point. That's the typical really good free agent you see. With Soto, you can kind of throw out that multiplier, that formula, because 26-year-old best players in baseball don't really exist. You just have to pay a dollar more than the other team because there's not another way to get that kind of player for that kind of money. The second part of it is the skills that age really poorly. If you think of Carl Crawford, Jacoby Ellsbury, these up-the-middle athletic players, those guys tend to fall off a cliff in their late 20s, early 30s. Guys that have what are typically called in the industry old man skills, which would be bat-to-ball ability, plate discipline, instincts, those sorts of things, those age really well, and that's who Soto is. So while he's not a conventionally like football-level athlete, and kind of relies on power and plays in the corner, he has arguably the best eye in baseball since he's been a teenager. And so because of that, the odds that he can be a passable player into his late 30s are actually really high. Like there's a world where he's, 43 and he's just like, the latter day version of Matt Stairs, where he's still a useful guy, even if he's like barely able to walk out there because he's so good at those soft skills. You put those two things together, that's why so many teams are offering $700 million. There's no other way to get a guy like this.
Kylie McDaniel, MLB baseball or MLB insider for ESPN with us here on the Hoffman Show, dropping tremendous amounts of knowledge on how Juan Soto just wound up with a 15-year, $765 million deal from the New York Mets. There's so many different angles on this, Kylie, but let's wrap up the Washington angle real quick. If you are Mike Rizzo and you're sitting in your office this morning or you get the text last night, however Mike Rizzo found out about this, what are you thinking knowing that guy was in your building 4 years ago, what you offered him, the whole deal?
He was in a spot where I don't think he had a choice. Like he offered essentially the top of the market, something that got Boris to think about it, with a guy that he knew, like he knew before everybody else. He was aggressively promoting this guy as a teenager when the entire industry was like, this guy's probably good, but like the way you're promoting this guy suggests you think he's an all-timer, which, any teenager in A-ball doesn't look like an all-timer. There's always a chance they don't work out. And obviously he was correct. So there is a big vote of confidence that comes from your scouting process and the way that you develop players and promote players and get the most out of them. Didn't let them sit in the minors for 2 extra seasons to wait until, the typical age when guys get promoted. So all of that went well. And I don't think he was really in a position, like that kind of contract is like an ownership level decision. And I think offering that guy, 20 years at $600 million or whatever it would have taken for him to sign, there's a line of thinking that Scott Boras would have told Juan Soto, don't sign for any number. Whatever he offers you, there's going to be a bigger number in 2 years. You just got to wait. And you're not a pitcher. You're not going to blow out and your elbow and like magically this number just goes to zero or close to zero. So I don't think he really had a choice other than playing the whole thing out, not getting any prospects, getting Juan Soto on a not very competitive team for the last couple of years, and then gambling in an open market that you could match bids, which, I mean, we saw the Yankees almost entirely matched every part of the Mets offer from what we know so far. It was at least close that if he wanted to stay, it was enough money to stay. And I think the Yankees approach it the same way they do with Aaron Judge, where it's like, we're not going to give you the most money. We'll give you competitive money. And it seems like Juan Soto either just wanted the Mets or just wanted the most money, or wanted the team that gave him, the most attention, or however you want to like translate that. And so if that's the case, it would have been insane for Mike Rizzo to think that he would win that bidding war, because he could have come like to match every single part of that deal, gotten no prospects in return, and then lost them and just gotten a draft pick in return. So it didn't seem like he really had a choice, but it seems like he's as likely as anybody to find the next Juan Soto because he found this one.
So what do we make of the fact that Soto did choose the Mets compared to the Yankees here when their Yankees deal was so close and they were the incumbent? What is the significance of that?
There was a lot of, I'll say unsubstantiated chatter, but we'll say informed chatter that Soto didn't really care about the team or the coast or the tax situation or anything like that. He just wanted the most money and the sort of status and precedent setting that comes with getting the most money, and that the Mets were the team that seemed the most interested because of the owner in just setting records and getting out there first and showing the most interest, and there being sort of a, like a college recruiting aspect to it. And that's almost exactly how it played out. It just sounds like when everyone thought the price was going to be $620, that the Mets were already at $720, and just everything happened close to what people expected, just $100 million more than was expected. And then the fact, again, that like the Blue Jays, the Red Sox, all those teams sound like they went over $700 million, which is truly baffling. It's one of those examples where people thought that the 900 wasn't possible in skateboarding, and then somebody did it, and 13-year-olds were doing it a year later. It's like people just needed to know that it was possible, and Ohtani getting that deal just made it possible. A 700 is like a thing you can get, and then just one winter later, it just gets completely blown out of the water when you adjust for the deferrals. Like those contracts aren't even really similar.
Kylie, you definitely played like the Tony Hawk game on N64, didn't you?
I know all the little secrets.
Yeah, 100%. Same,
absolutely.
Same. Yeah,
you wasted a lot of time if you ask my mom.
Yeah, well, look at you now. You're doing radio hits, getting to drop knowledge about 900s back in the day, and I get to get the reference. So take that, both of our moms. Kylie McDaniel, ESPN MLB insider with us. Craig Hoffman here with you on the Hoffman Show. It's the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. So then you have kind of this bigger picture baseball thing where Steve Cohen has come in and fundamentally changed who the Mets are as a franchise and put yet another big, like, ultimate grade A spender in the sport along with the Dodgers and the Yankees. What do you think that means for the sport writ large and for Cohen specifically to do this the way that he seems to be operating?
There is a line of thinking that if you are seeking efficiency and rooting for front offices or the laundry as opposed to the players, that you don't want an owner stepping out of line. You want everyone acting similarly. As you can tell by how I'm saying that, don't agree with that. That's boring, and it's like turning an exciting sport into a spreadsheet, and leans into, McKinsey and Company and all of these consulting companies that are trying to make every corporation and every baseball team the same.
Careful, Kylie. You're on the radio in D.C. Go after McKenzie at your own will. Come on now.
My wife's a lobbyist. It's okay.
Fantastic. All right.
But then another way of thinking about it would be it's more fun when there's, 29 kids playing with their Tonka trucks and whatnot, and one kid just comes through kicking everything. Like, it might seem chaotic, but it's probably more fun that everyone has to adjust to that. And so Steve Cohen comes in, doesn't really seem concerned with, like, the profit and loss statement. He's just like, I got a ton of money. I could spend it on artwork. I could spend it on baseball players. I could spend it on trying to get this trophy. That's what I want to do. And so in a world where, baseball and labor and economics and all these things can be very gray and fuzzy and boring concepts, similarly to back when George Steinbrenner was running the Yankees, there was like a level of unpredictability that like anybody could do anything and any guy could be on any team and maybe they'll double their payroll year over year. Like all these things are possible. I think it's better for baseball, even if it turns into the Mets, the Dodgers, and the Yankees have all the money and they're in the World Series every year and it gets to be boring, which I don't think would happen. Baseball's just not that kind of sport. But I think having the Death Star running against these other teams, having two of the Death Stars being in the same city, and then having an unpredictable owner that just wants to win and doesn't really care about money. It's just a concept of how he keeps track of how things are going. I think it's better for the sport. It makes it more competitive and less predictable and kind of spreads out where the players are going, and gives other teams imagine how Tampa and Pittsburgh and Oakland, or I guess Sacramento now, are thinking about this, where they're just like, oh, not only do we not think we could afford Juan Soto, like he might be worth more than our entire franchise. It's definitely worth more than our entire team of players. I don't know. It's just a more dynamic sport, even though you can look at it and say it seems less fair. It's been proven that it's not the same teams winning the World Series every year. Like it still moves around a lot.
Well, that's where I was going to go with it next, and I have one more question specific to Soto for you. But because you can't buy the World Series, you can certainly buy getting yourself a chance every year, and it seems like that the Dodgers have successfully done that. The Yankees did that for a long time. There's been other teams that have kind of fluctuated in and out of the highest payrolls, and they're typically pretty good. But there's also always some other teams that just are good. They've scouted well. Their players age together, and then lo and behold, bang, they all come together and until they wind up being too expensive to hold on to, and then they fade back and try to repeat that cycle. Call them, I don't know, the Rays. And so if you are Steve Cohen pursuing this strategy, how much are you thinking about just spending the most on the most proven commodities versus building a team to the extent that, baseball is this more individualized sport, pitcher, hitter matchups, the whole deal, versus like basketball or football where there's a lot more coordination between teammates required and kind of complementary skill sets, if you will. What is the balance in trying to, like, if you're trying to build the best baseball team, are you going about it Steve Cohen's way, or are you going about it some other way, or some hybrid in between?
Yeah, the answer is always somewhere in between. The interesting part to me of this Yankees, Mets, Dodgers seem to be trying to take over the sport is I'm looking at the projected standings right now based on the teams today, which is obviously not final. The Braves and Orioles are second, third, and the Astros are fourth. So they're not even on paper the best teams by a mile right now. They're all very good. But the other part of this is, if you look at the GMs of the Mets and the Yankees and the Dodgers GM or president, Andrew Friedman, came from Tampa, where he learned how to do all this stuff on a shoestring budget. The president of the Mets, David Stearns, came from Houston and then Milwaukee. I would argue in Milwaukee had maybe the best track record of making the most from the least. And then Brian Cashman is at the forefront. He may not want to admit it, but him and his office are at the forefront of analytics and the sort of cutting edge things in player development, scouting, and things like that. So what's happening is, if I'm going to make another metaphor, is if you would imagine indie film directors that, make a movie run around with the $20,000 budget and then they get a Marvel movie. They're like, well, there's a way where this could work if Marvel, the company itself, is the one doing all the action set pieces, because this director doesn't know how to do that. He's never done that before. But if he just directs the three people when they're in a room, and now he's got Robert Downey Jr. instead of some guy you've never heard of in an indie movie, this could still work. And so what the Mets are doing is they've got an owner with all the money and all the resources, and then they brought in essentially the indie director, the guy that can do it on a shoestring budget, and then they gave him all the money. And we've seen with Theo Epstein and other guys like this, if you get the guy that is efficient on a small scale and then put him on a big scale, you can get the best of both worlds and mesh them together. Now, we haven't seen what the Mets might be doing, which is just doubling everyone else's payroll. That might get to the point where you can't really do the small ball thing in terms of strategy, having that big of a budget. But the Dodgers have really accomplished a balance between being on the cutting edge, being efficient, but then also beating people up with their money and being competitive every year, even if it hasn't been quite as many World Series as maybe, the obsession with process would suggest maybe they should have won. Again, in baseball, you can't really do that. So the fact that the Mets may now become one of these perennial favorites to be in the mix every year, the same way the Yankees are, they might also, like the Yankees, only win one World Series in the last, 15 or 18 years. That doesn't mean it's a failure. It just means they've lost some coin flips after sort of being in the final group of teams, or the final table, if you want to use a poker analogy. They're now probably just going to be in that final group as long as this set of players and executives and owner are in play. And again, I think it's exciting for the sport of baseball that there's now another team in that group that still has to compete with the Orioles and the Rays and the Braves and teams that are doing it different ways. It's interesting to see what this can look like with the most resources thrown at that more efficient process.
So last question for Kylie McDaniel, the Major League Baseball insider from ESPN who's with us here on the Hoffman Show, would be this. This is now going to be Juan Soto's fourth team. He's 25 years old, which is somewhat unprecedented because of the cost controls and the things that we've talked about. Premier players don't bounce around when they're young in baseball, if they really even bounce around that much at all throughout the careers, barring the ones that play till they're 38 and have three teams, in 3 years at the end. Is that good, bad, neutral? Do you ascribe any meaning or positivity or negativity to that in terms of the health of the sport or the way that we think about Soto?
That's an interesting question. I guess it depends on what you want. I would argue that when basketball got so into analytics that it's all dunks and threes, I think dunks and threes are the most exciting part of the sport, but got to the point where it was all dunks and threes, and maybe that was too much. In the same way that guys throwing 100 miles an hour and trying to hit home runs turned into a lot of weak ground balls to the right side and strikeouts, and it got boring even though you were leaning into home runs and strikeouts and guys throwing 100, which are inherently fun things to watch. Should Juan Soto get drafted by a team and stay with that team for 25 years? Maybe. I think the combination of him being so good so early, being on track to hit free agency at an unprecedentedly early age, and then having Scott Boras involved, and then having the chance to set this mark that can signal the health and popularity of baseball in the same way the Ohtani deal did, I would argue it's those things that made him move around, not anything inherent about him as a player or about baseball as a sport. It was that this is essentially a hot potato, like how I described Mike Rizzo's situation, where it was, well, you could basically let this guy leave and just get one late first or late second round draft pick for a generational talent because you lost a coin flip when it came to a bid. He's so good and would return so much, you can't let it get to that. Therefore, you have to move him. And then when the Padres were told by their owner, you don't have any more money to spend, and this guy's going to be a free agent at the end of the year, you can turn that into multiple young, cheap players. They couldn't avoid that situation. And then the Yankees also took the risk. This guy's so good. We got 1 year. Let's take a shot on him. And then the Mets were like, we got only a couple spots to fill and an unprecedented amount of money to spend. It's just he just put himself in a situation by being so good and so young and having that agent that he is at the top of everyone's list and is so good you have to move him. I don't think it's necessarily anything negative about that. I think that's really just the market working because I would argue it might be worse if there was only a chance he could only play for a couple teams. The fact that San Diego had him for whatever it was, a year and a half, I think it's probably healthy for baseball that market could have that player.
Yeah, I guess you could make that argument. It's something I thought of the question. I didn't really think too much about my own answer, but perhaps the final hour and a half of this radio show that I'm still going to do, I can think about that more. And if I think out loud into the microphone, Kylie, they'll pay me for it. So that's neat. That's good for me.
Be sure not to offend all the lobbyists and consultants out there on K Street.
No, of course not. Especially if they want to sponsor the show. Kylie McDaniel, ESPN, Major League Baseball insider, nice enough to join us here on the Hoffman Show. Kylie, this was fantastic. If there's more baseball news that we need someone to talk about, we'll definitely give you a buzz back. Thanks for joining us.
Yep, shout out to the homies at McKinsey.
All right, see ya. That's Kylie McDaniel, everybody, with us here on the Hoffman Show, getting real DC on us here on the Team 980. When we get back, we will go around the NFL. We'll see how our picks went. We will give you analysis from each and every game, and we'll set the table for the final month of the NFL's regular season. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Thanks again to Kylie McDaniel, who was fantastic, joining us, talking about the Juan Soto deal. Might get back into that a little bit coming up in the 6 p.m. hour. You will hear from Dan Quinn in the 6 p.m. hours. The Commanders had a bonus day today out in Ashburn. Quinn addressing the media. They practiced. Got a Marshawn Lattimore update. So we'll get to all that coming up in just a little bit. Right now, though, it is time to go around the NFL. Before we do, Anthony Haney, records. How we sitting on the picks?
So, excuse me, Mr. Craig Hoffman, you
Yes, sir.
have a 4-game lead over yours truly.
Going into the games we're about to review.
Yes.
Okay.
This does not include the Thursday nighter.
Okay.
So with the Thursday nighter, you're a game ahead of me.
Yeah, because I
Or
picked the
5.
Lions, you picked the Packers.
Sadly.
All right. On against the spread this week, again, I do a pick show against the spread on YouTube on Mondays, which I now feel more inclined to tell people because I've been very good at it. I'm 7-5 going into tonight.
Okay. Hey, look, I know I have a chance on Wednesday.
You got a chance.
I
You
do
got
have a chance.
I know I got at least one win that I can remember. But we'll see how that go. I got 7-5. Tony was 4-8 this week.
Whoa, that's brutal.
He had a terrible. It was funny because I typically don't look at that until right before we do it. But I just decided as I was sitting on the couch yesterday, I was like, oh, as 4 o'clock window starting, I was like, let me go in the spreadsheet and see who did what. And I was just like, L. I was like, damn, Tony. So, yeah, I had another good week for your boy. We'll see on Wednesday if it was good for Competition Wednesday. For Anthony, for me, we'll see how that goes. As for now, let's get you not just who got the picks right, but a little analysis from every game on a day where I was able to sit on the couch and enjoy a little NFL Red Zone. By the way, there is one game this week. Let me look at this up real quick. When we were doing the pick show this morning, speaking of Red Zone, I threatened Scott Hansen and the Red Zone people. It was the Jets-Jags. I said, if you put that game, I know every touchdown from every game, the whole deal. Scott Hansen, if you put Jets-Jaguars on the screen, everybody in NFL Red Zone is fired. That game sucks.
How many times did he do it?
No, I'm saying for this coming week. For this coming week. Just neither team deserves to be on television. No one should have to watch that. No one should go to that game. That game should be boycotted.
Yeah.
All right. As for the games that went down yesterday, we talked about Lions-Packers for a while on Friday, so you want our thoughts on that from the Thursday night game, you can most certainly check that out in the Hoffman Show podcast. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this game. Jags-Titans.
Ridiculous, man.
The Titans lost to the Jags, who were being led by Mac Jones, who I don't even think threw a touchdown pass. He was 23 of 31 with 2 picks, and they lost to that guy because Will Levis was 19 of 32 for 168, no touchdowns, no picks. His average completion was his average yards per attempt was 5.3 yards.
Embarrassing, man.
Embarrassing. Not only that, the Jags only ran for 71 yards total. So it wasn't like they had a good day on the ground. They just offensively are insulting, both of these teams. There's a play that happened in I don't remember what quarter it was, but Levis, so the Titans try to get sneaky, it's so obvious what they're doing. But they put Jeffrey Simmons, their defensive tackle, in at fullback.
Oh yeah,
and they try to leak him out, and it's like, because the situation, I think it might have been a fourth down. Yeah, it was 4th down. So they go for it, and so you're not running it there. So they try this play action, which on 2nd down might work, but on 4th down, nobody's falling for it. Simmons is covered. And then on the backside of the play, though, they have 2 of their tight ends running about 8 yards apart in the end zone. If Levis just dots Chigakonkwo, who normally is who he's looking for because he's their best player offensively in terms of a skill position guy. Well, maybe not best. Calvin Ridley's pretty good. But he's their number 1 target. Nobody's on him. He's wide open. Butt naked open. Instead, he throws to the other tight end who is in tight coverage, and the play is made on the ball. You're just like, bro, was the other dude not in your vision as you stared through him? Like, just unbelievable stuff. We talked too much about this game. Who did we pick?
We both got it wrong. We both chose the Titans. They should have won the game. You cannot go to the red zone 2 straight drives and not convert.
Pathetic. Speaking of pathetic, the Jets lose. They had a lead with like 40 seconds to go. Gave up a huge kick return, couple of completions, bang home a tying field goal right before time expires, and then the Dolphins go right back down the field again, find Jonnu Smith in the end zone, and get the overtime win. This game ticked me off from a spread standpoint, Anthony, because they don't kick the extra point in overtime. Guess what the spread was in this game?
7.
6.5. Oh. So Dolphins win by 6. They kick the extra point just for formality's sake. Winner. Instead, 6. Poopsie. But the Dolphins get an important win if they try to keep their playoff hopes alive. The Jets officially eliminated from the playoffs despite Aaron Rodgers' first 300-yard game as a Jet, first 200-yard game in forever. But they couldn't get anything going on the ground. And despite a big day from Devontae Adams, Dolphins just too much. And the Jets are sad again. They're 1-6 away from home. They're 3-10 on the season.
Yeah, they stink.
Bad football team. How about the Vikings in the fourth quarter? 21-0 fourth quarter. And, look, they won by 21. 42-21, they double up the Atlanta Falcons on a day where Kirk Cousins was back in Minnesota for the first time. Kirk, frustrating game. Like a classically frustrating Kirk Cousins game. It's kind of funny, actually, Anthony, because I feel like in a lot of ways, Kirk has reverted to the Washington Kirk and like more early Washington Kirk that was like, it's fine to play like this when you're ascending and you're like 24, 25 in your first couple of years as a starter. And you're like, man, this guy, when he hits his prime, 26 through 30, like he's gonna, and like for Kirk, the last season here threw for a ton of yards and was really good. Really all 3 years as starter here, but like, especially as he got going, was really good. He was fantastic in Minnesota. And last year, he was playing his best football before he got hurt. And now he's kind of playing at the level that he played early Washington, like before he was the starter, when he was a spot starter. And it's like, you see the potential, but it's just, his brain sometimes just overloads. And on these picks, like that seems to be what's happening. And he's throwing it right to guys. And so 23-37, 344, but no touchdowns, 2 picks. His QBR is only a 65. Bijan Robinson, 22 carries, 92 yards. Algier also had a touchdown, an efficient 9 for 63 for him. Meanwhile, Sam Darnold, talk about efficiency, 22 of 28 for 5 touchdowns, 3 to Jordan Addison, 2 to Justin Jefferson. What a day for the Vikings offense. They roll 42-21 and maintain their pursuit of the Lions for the NFC North crown. They're 11-2, but currently, obviously, the top wild card spot because the Lions have only lost 1 game this season. Those two will play in Week 18.
Yeah, Sam Darnold, he had an exceptional game. But Jordan Addison, oh my God, I would have hated playing against him in fantasy football. They just had the Falcons defense just had some crazy busts like down in the secondary. Like they just gave up big play after big play. Justin Jefferson wide open. How do you leave Justin Jefferson open 2 times?
I don't know. That one, like, Darnold extended the play.
Yeah, he did. He stepped up.
And Simmons thought he's throwing shorter and kind of abandoned his spot deep. And then the corner is just like, sometimes that happens where you're the outside guy in cover 3 and your safety abandons you and you look like a boob. But it doesn't help you not look like a boob when you fall down.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a joke of a play. By the way, speaking of fantasy, I did not have Addison, but did you by chance catch what I did in our fantasy league, like our show fantasy league this week?
I did not.
So if I told you that I had to start Cordero Patterson at running back, and I started the Bears defense,
yikes,
you probably think I had a pretty bad, and Herbert was my quarterback.
Yeah, you had a bad day.
Anthony, do you know who my receivers are?
I do not. But I would think Addison.
Nope, not Addison.
Okay.
JJ.
Okay. Big
Jets. Devontae Adams.
Big day.
And Puka Nacua.
Oh, you had a Monsters Day.
Yeah. Those three guys
Oh, my God.
combined for like 90-something points for me.
Oh, my God.
So and then I have James Conner.
That helps, too.
So sorry to our guy Ford, who's frequently listening and watching the show. But despite the fact that you had Sam Darnold at quarterback and I had Justin Herbert and I had Cordero Patterson, who fumbled his only carry, and the Bears defense
gave you negative.
I smoked him. I put up 144.
Yeah, 3 people that gave you negative and you still put up 144 is quite impressive.
Yeah, good day for the pass catchers. Yeah. By the way, me winning with Devontae Adams is the most winning that Devontae Adams has done, like, all season. Saints and Giants. Let's get to this and Panthers-Eagles real quick before we take a quick break, come back, and review the rest of the day, including that absolute banger of a Bills-Rams game. Saints, who are going to be likely without Derek Carr this week, hold on for dear life. They get a blocked field goal as time expires to beat the Giants 14-11. Darren Rizzi, what a day for him as the former special teams coach, now turned head coach. The special teams was not good for the Saints overall, but they blocked the kick in the end. He also at one point, Anthony, I don't know if you saw this, lost his mind on his kicker. Like, slammed his hat down, was like yelling. His not his kicker, his punter.
Yeah.
And I think that is absolute clown behavior. Now,
I think he told him not to kick it to the dude or kick it elsewhere because they had a huge return after that.
Yeah, you want to know what helped that big return? There was a penalty on the Giants. Also, screaming bloody murder at your punter to the point that your star running back is like, "Hey, coach, like, let's back off. Like, this is ridiculous." Yeah. Like, it's just so childish. Like, what is an adult who's in charge, like a CEO type in charge of 200 grown men? Why do you get to throw a temper tantrum like a child?
Yeah.
Like, if your 3-year-old acted like that, you'd be like, "Hey, are you hungry? Do you need to get your big feelings out? Okay, get your big feelings out." Like, you're a grown man. It's ridiculous. Now, Darren Rizzi has gotten rave reviews as a guy. I don't know that that's necessarily a reflection of his character, but I just thought that was very, very clownish behavior. And ultimately, though, the Saints, it works out for them because Drew Lock's the other quarterback. I don't know that as I prepare for the Saints and I watch the tape that I need to for this show and for Take Command, I don't know that I'm going to watch the Saints defense last week because that means I have to watch the Giants offense, and I call the boss, see if I can get hazard pay. If not, I don't feel the need to watch that.
I don't blame you, Craig.
Ugh. Panthers and Eagles. Wow. What a bonkers game this was. As in, the Panthers damn near came back and won this thing. They are Xavier Leggett dropping a pass late in the end zone away from the Panthers pulling ahead. They would have tied the game, presumably, if they make the extra point. They then are ahead by 1 with 40 seconds to go. Jalen Hurts struggles again as a passer, but he can just continue to turn around, hand the ball to Saquon Barkley, and see good things happen. Hurts just 14 of 21, but did have 2 touchdowns, 108 yards, though. Barkley had more, 20 for 124. But the thing with Hurts, 8 for 59 and a touchdown. Like, he's so dangerous as a runner. And that is the difference. And Bryce Young continues to revive his career. 19 of 34, 191, a touchdown, and a pick. But Carolina, not enough. They fall at Philadelphia. But the fact that they played that close, kudos to Carolina. All right, where are we at on the record so far through the week, Anthony?
You're at 5-1. I'm at 4-2.
Okay, not bad. All right, when we get back, we'll just go through the rest of the slate, including making sure we save enough time for that Bills-Rams classic that might just have been the NFL's game of the year. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, and we are going around the NFL talking about all the games from yesterday. Give a little insight, a little analysis, some more than others. I don't know how much there is to talk about. Our next game before we get back to the Commanders at 6 o'clock with a Monday special edition of a Pick 6, as Dan Quinn did speak a little bit earlier today. But as we pick things back up, going around the league, Steelers 27, Browns 14. Steelers just continue to roll. They weren't really threatened in the second half of this game. It's 13-7 at half, but Pittsburgh comes out scores 14 unanswered in the third quarter. Russell Wilson, this is what they do. It's not prolific, but they get chunks at a time. 15-26 for 158 and 2 touchdowns. Jameis, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Najee Harris, 53 yards. Jalen Warren, 47 yards. And they find ways to move the chains. They find ways to get in the end zone, and they also kind of know who they are. They know, hey, we didn't need George Pickens, so they took an extra week with the hamstring, and now Pittsburgh has an enormous matchup coming up this weekend in a showdown with the Eagles. So that one should be fun. This one, not a whole lot to talk about, Anthony.
Yeah, not too much, but Russell Wilson, man, when he heats up, it's a little scary, Craig.
Yeah, he's showing some of that, let's move a little bit, shake a little bit, and throw a sidearm or whatever. He's got that baseball background and can throw, and there's a couple throws he made in this game where you're like, oh, there's Russ, the playmaker. Tampa started hot, finished hot, whole lot of nothing and consternation in between. But eventually they do dispose of the Raiders. 28-13 is the final. Aiden O'Connell left this game, so it's probably Desmond Ridder next week for Las Vegas. I'm guessing we both picked the Steelers and the Bucs, Anthony?
Yes, we did.
Okay, add 2 more to both of our sheets. Seahawks 30, Cardinals 18. How about Zach Charbonnet? 22 carries, $134. That is easily his best game of the season in terms of the impact that he has. And again, I talked about this off the top of the show. If Seattle can run the football and take some of the pressure off of Geno, they become a totally different team. And they started hot. They took advantage of Kyler throwing a couple of bad balls early. Two interceptions early for Kyler, who goes 25-38 for 259 on the day. James Conner had a nice day, but he only gets 18 carries on a day where you'd love to get him 25 because you turn the football over. And add that to the efficiency of Seattle's offense. Geno, 24 of 30 on the day, and you get a nice tidy 30-18 victory.
Yeah, definitely surprised by Zach Charbonnet popping out the way he did, but what's going on with Marvin Harrison Jr., Craig? He has been nowhere seen in a couple of weeks. I don't know what's going on between him and Kyler, or maybe it's the OC. I don't know. They need to get Marvin Harrison Jr. more involved if they want to have some success.
There's something that's not right there.
Something. And
I respected him for the way he handled the draft process, all that, but it hasn't looked right.
Yeah.
And for as hyped as he was, and for as touted as he was, I wonder if Malik Neighbors just winds up flat out being the better player. I don't think Marvin Harrison's going to be a bad player, but is he just a really good player for a long time, and he's not a great player, all-time receiver that he was projected to be coming out of Ohio State. He just doesn't have the explosiveness and the top-end speed. And maybe he's battling some kind of injury that we just don't know about, and it'll get fixed. But that's kind of who he's been the entire season.
Yeah.
And there's some the GPS data and stuff that I know earlier in the season at least was kind of alarming to people that were like, whoa, why is he never hitting 20-plus miles an hour? That's alarming. Bills-Rams. Anthony, what a freaking game.
Dude.
Josh Allen, 22 for 37, 342, and 3 touchdowns through the air to go with his 10 carries for 82 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground, and they lost. When they got down early in this game, they completely abandoned the run, which is wild because this is a team that has kind of thrived on the run, and I wonder if that had something to do with their defense giving up the 44 points that it did. Obviously, they can give up all of them because the punt block was taken back for a touchdown, but 30 plus. could they have controlled the ball a little more? I don't know. Like, Allen was pretty efficient on the day, all things considered. They converted a bunch of third downs. By the way, speaking of third downs, did you see the Rams stats on third down in this game?
I did not.
They finished 11 for 15.
Good gracious.
I think they started like 10 for 11 or something. Just absolutely wild. But it was because they were super efficient on first and second down, and they didn't face a ton of third and longs. But even the ones they didn't get, like, Sean goes for it on the fourth down, they get it. Just the day from Puka, Kyron, like, it is what we've talked about on the show before, where if they have Stafford, Puka, Cooper Kupp, and Kyron Williams, they are really tough to beat, and that's what the Rams look like. Now all of a sudden their offensive line is getting healthy. Look out. Rams are dangerous.
Definitely look out. And also, Craig, before I even talk about this game, there's something I must do. Sorry, Josh Allen. I need to apologize for the disrespect from earlier this season that I had. I wasn't familiar with your game.
He's almost won the MVP like the last 2 years. How could you not have been familiar with this game? I'm not saying he's not getting better.
I thought that was because of the weapons that he had around him, but he's doing this with like less.
No running
game. Exactly. No running game. The fact James Cook, and I hope they go back to running the ball, because you have to be able to run the ball in the playoffs. You cannot lean on Josh Allen. Not to say he can't get it done, but 4 games in the playoffs, if you expect to win, you got to be able to run the ball.
Yeah, no, I think they've been better as a team when they can do that.
Yeah.
That said, like, Khalil Shakir is a good player,
man.
And they're getting some production from other places, but like, yeah, Allen. For me, it's Mahomes, Allen, Lamar.
Yeah.
And if you want to nitpick between, this season obviously Pat hasn't been the best guy, but like he's still him. He's got the rings, and so until further notice, like he's still the best quarterback in football.
Yeah.
If I had to win any single game, I would take Mahomes. And if you want to say I prefer Lamar versus Josh, fine. I think Burrow's not far off of that group. But, like, those are the best 3 quarterbacks in football.
Yeah, no question.
And, yeah, we'll snip this up and send it to a certain Bills fan who is named Will Dawkins, the Wizards GM, who you had this argument with at Wizards Open Day. Yeah, good. I'm glad that we got that on the record from you. It was a more than worthy apology.
Yes.
The Chicago Bears. Oh my God! I thought they were gonna all of a sudden like play better. Like we got rid of the coach. Let's get a new coach bump. Nope. They let go of Eberflus, and they also let go of the rope. Yeah. How about the 49ers just absolutely putting it on them? 38-13. Hell of a day from Brock Purdy. 20-25 for 325 and 2 touchdowns. Garundo, he's just the next guy up and the next running back. 15 carries, 78 yards. And, hey, I don't know. You got all these guys that are out. Ayuk's out. McCaffrey's out. Maybe you want to cover George Kittle. 6 catches, 151 for Kittle. And then last night, voodoo magic again for the Chiefs. Mahomes clutch late, even if he wasn't great throughout the night. And Justin Herbert, like, hats off to you, sir, just dragging your foot all over the field in the second half, throwing darts. But ultimately, the Chiefs win 19-17. All right, how do we wrap up on the records?
You went 8-4. I went 6-6. Sadly, I chose the Chargers to win.
Whoops.
And then the other game that we differed on was the Lions-Packers. So yeah,
hate that for you.
I know. I know.
Damn shame. And then we're both on the Bengals tonight.
Yes, we are. Belt to butt tonight.
Yeah, I'm on the Bengals on the against the spread too. I got it at 6. So let's go Bungles in a blowout. Please, because I would like to solidify another excellent week of picking football games. Our next time that we pick football games will be Wednesday. During Competition Wednesday, I will be wearing a ridiculous outfit during that because I lost my a couple weeks ago. I did lose to Anthony. It's the only time in the history of the competition that I have. If you're watching on YouTube right now, Anthony has his Groucho Marx glasses on. Just because he enjoys wearing them. For me, it will be punishment. So that's Wednesday at 5:30. When we get back, you'll hear from Dan Quinn as it is time for a Pick 6 at 6 on a Commanders bonus practice day for Washington. They were out there in Ashburn getting things done. And so you'll hear from DQ next on the Team 980. It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. All right, coming up in a little bit, we might revisit some of the Juan Soto talk and try to answer a question that I asked our ESPN MLB baseball insider who joined us earlier in the show at 5 o'clock. But right now it is time on a day where Dan Quinn did a little extra talking because it's the bye week and the guys are back and they had a practice, and so Quinn spoke. It's time for a pick six.
The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
We set out to find a leader, someone who could take this franchise to the next level, build an elite team that consistently competes for championships.
All right, let's dive right in, shall we?
Number 1.
With injury updates. Everyone's favorite. We need some good injury updates, and hey, they actually got some good injury updates for once in a literal sense, including Marshawn Lattimore.
Last week went good, John. A lot of top speed running. So hitting all the markers as we're moving along. He was able to participate in the work that we did today. And as we're getting into practice, we're looking forward to getting him, regular work with the practice with the guys, and then we'll take that all the way through the week. But we were very encouraged about all the work that he and the medical team have put in. He's hitting all the steps along the way, and look forward to doing that more in practice this week as well.
So in terms of what he needs to do this week to actually play?
Just the markers of him being able to, hit all the speeds, all the change of directions, and really all the things that will come up in practice for his position. So we've put him through a lot of tests, John, all the strength, all the speed to go. And so he's hit all the markers up until now. And so that process that we have is a strict one for that reason, to keep the players safe and healthy. And so he's done a really good job of making sure he could hit them. And we'll take that into practice now this week, and hopefully that'll lead into a full week of practice and into the game. But until we get all the way to that spot, I'll stay guarded and then give you guys updates as we get into Friday.
Anthony, can I do a bit real quick?
Yeah.
If we were gonna do if the Commanders were gonna do like some kind of roast, and Dan Quinn was going to be roasted, or you're going to do some kind of comedy bit around Dan Quinn, you'd have to do something about how much he loves takeout. He loves to talk about stuff to go. That's like a pet phrase of his. Oh, the speed to go. Hit all the markers to go. I'm like, Dan, you want to just dine in today?
That would be funny. I'm not gonna lie.
There's probably we need to get a professional comedian, which is the other afternoon show. They have one of those.
Yeah.
But there's something there. I don't fully have it worked out yet. Perhaps I'll work on it. But he does love to say things to go. So I apologize to everyone for ruining all the Dan Quinn press conferences when he says that moving forward. Typically it's in a way that actually, I don't know exactly what it means, but it kind of makes sense. I think it's like to move forward. But it's a thing that he says. Anyway, speaking of things Dan Quinn says, he also was asked today about the health status of Andrew Wiley, who, if you'll remember before the break, missed the final game due to a concussion.
Went all through the process for us, and everything's trending up for him to go and get a full week of work in. So it just worked out that time and that space, was helpful for him.
So we'll get more on Wednesday as they get back to the regular practice, but Commanders practicing today, and those are the injury updates. As for what they did over the last week,
Number 2,
Dan Quinn asked about things that he would like to improve on coming out of the bye week.
We still want to improve on our turnover margin, Sam. I think we're at 8th or 9th, somewhere into that space, but we'd love to, as we're pushing through these games, you want to be able to try to finish in double digits if you can. And so we're not there yet. And so that's always one that's at the front of my thinking. Then you get into tackling and breaking tackles from a fundamental standpoint. How do you work that? How do you break leverage onto people? And then as we're going in through that, we're always come back to the line of scrimmages. Now, I think I was referring earlier about that, with either John or with Nikki, about that's going to be, an area of emphasis for us. And not just this game and the next game, but really just moving forward. That has to be, a strong part of what we do.
Offensively, I think they've done a pretty good job in a lot of the line of scrimmage stuff this season, both by design and then ultimately they've executed that well because they've been set up for success. Defensively, it's been a little bit more hit or miss, so that's something to keep an eye on over these final 4 games of the season. And the Saints, they're not good. They've got a couple guys up front that can be a pain. By the way, including Chase Young, who's having a solid season. Obviously, if you let him loose, he can do damage. But if you can just stay disciplined against him, you're perfectly fine. Not much has changed in that regard. As for making sure that the team stays sharp coming out of the bye week, those were the kind of listicle version of the focuses. What does he coach these guys up on? Because every coach wants to be sharp coming out of the bye week. How do you make sure that happens?
That's a great one, Don. And I think you're right. The practice is where we really come together as an entire team. And the urgency at practice, that's the marker. Because that urgency can also help you with the focus. That urgency can help you with the communication. You've been a part of a practice where it's fast and it's upbeat and you're hearing that type of communication. So what we did today was to set us up for a great week. So jog through, some throwing, some catching, the communication, the line of scrimmage, it was all designed to, as going into Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, that we can really throw a hell of a week and have ourselves a championship week in terms of the preparation of what we do. So having a day like today is important. I wouldn't have wanted to come in just, from the bye and right into the Wednesday. So today was kind of like a setup day. Get everything orchestrated, situated, work out. So by the time you do get to Wednesday, you can really let it rip. And that's the urgency at practice that I'll be looking for, and that will carry over into the game.
That ramp-up day is really critical. It kind of whets the appetite. Now all of a sudden you get back and you're ready to go. You come back to work after your first day from vacation, and it's only so sharp you're going to be. But you knock the rust off, and then all of a sudden you come back, in this case, 2 days later, and you're ready to rip and go. So we'll see how they respond on Wednesday. And final part of our first half of our Pick Six.
Number 3.
The Commanders are in control of their own path to the playoffs, a.k.a. if they just win games, they are in. They are currently holders of the 7 seed. I'm trying to avoid the phrase controlling your own destiny, because destiny is technically, by definition, already written. No one's in control of their own destiny. And a sports phraseology, the Commanders control their own destiny. And Quinn was asked today about that fact and emphasizing that or not to the team.
Scott, you must have just logged on. There's zero chance we're talking about 4 weeks down the road. But what I can tell you, my friend, is that we really try to stay into the here and now. And honestly, what I talked about with the team was a concept of base camp. We're not at the bottom, but we're nowhere near the summit. You just try to get to the next camp and then to the next one and then to the next one. And so if we continue to chase that, Scott, that's where it's at for us. And so for us this week, we're going to constantly chase, can we get better and get everything we need to do for New Orleans? The following week, we'll do the same. But I just, try to make it a discipline. Can we be disciplined enough to not look 3 and 4 weeks down the road? And that's what we'll constantly go after. So sorry to spoil your moment there, but I did have to correct you on that one.
I think that is both funny, but also a very real moment from Dan Quinn, who is a little annoyed. I want to say with Scott Abraham, but with the idea, come on, man, you've been covering me. You know how this works. But, Anthony, I will ask you, have you watched Hard Knocks yet, the AFC North version?
I have not yet. It's 2 episodes in, right?
I believe that no, it's 1 episode in. 1 episode in. Unless
the second one comes out tomorrow.
Yeah. So in that episode, and in many other episodes that we've seen of Hard Knocks over the years for the in-season, it is very coaches love to say the stuff that Dan Quinn just said. And I'm not saying that DQ's lying about his approach, but coaches put the path to the playoffs on the board all the time. And they're like, we're 1 game at a time. Zach Taylor, Mike Tomlin, I think 3 or 4 of the coaches, I think maybe even 4 of the 4 coaches put up, hey, this is the rest of our season. This is how we make the playoffs. We got to beat our division. We got it's not taking the emphasis off of the game ahead. You spend so much time on it. But it sounds like Quinn doesn't even do that. So I just find it funny that it's Dan's I don't want to say annoyed. I don't see his facial expression. It certainly sounded almost annoyed by the question, and he was giving Scott a little bit of a snuff to be like, hey, man, you must have just logged on. But it's not a ridiculous question, even though I probably wouldn't ask that to Quinn because I know he's going to respond, which is exactly how he did. But it's not a preposterous question because a lot of other coaches do it, and we know that because it makes Hard Knocks.
Yeah, but what happens in their meetings sort of kind of stay in their meetings. So that's probably more so also what he was getting at too.
Maybe.
Like we're not gonna.
Dan loves to talk about his messaging though. He has a plan, and I think he wants to. I think one thing that I like. This is a compliment. This is me saying that I agree with this. I think other coaches at times would deliver different messages to the media and to the team, and I think Quinn likes talking about his message to the team in the media because there's a consistency there. And the players know, no matter where I hear this message, it gets translated to me on television, if I listen to whatever, if I watch whatever, if I'm scrolling my Instagram and I see a clip of a press conference, if I get asked about it by reporters, it's going to be exactly what Coach talked about when it was just us. And that means it's real. There's no games. It's like, no, this is really what we believe. It's not really messaging. It's substantive of like, this is direction. And I think that's good. That's how it should be. But I think it's funny that there are other coaches who are like, yeah, no, this is what the rest of our season looks like. And Dan is like, we are focused on practice today. Get the hell out of here with that stuff. And this is something he's done for other teams that he's coached. And how his previous teams handled the challenge of playing well in these big games is something he was asked about today as well. And I thought this answer was really cool, including a tidbit from one of the Commanders' partners.
Yeah, it's a good topic. And that's really, Dave, that you want. This is why you lean in on some of the players that have been in that experience. I'm talking about a Wagner. I'm talking about an Ertz. I'm talking about ones that, hey, man, Allegretti, like, let's talk through this and have the discussions about leaning into this game. And one thing I do like, Dave, I think this is important. I learned it from Coach Carroll, that if you just continue to make each of the games the same process, the same way that you go prepare, when you do step into these arenas, you don't make the next one bigger than the next one, and because you can get in your own head about that, but you really stay true to that process. Earlier this year, we've all heard a lot about trust the process. That's been maybe a buzzword, I don't know for how many years, but it's certainly maybe 5 or 10 years. Magic Johnson spoke to us, and he said, he's added one word at the end, David, I thought was important. He said, enjoy the process of winning. And I thought he was right. It's not just the process of getting ready. Or for us, that's competition Wednesday. That's where our team starts, and Thursday and Friday and into Saturday. And then you get to the game and you really feel confident because you put the work in. And that's what he was talking about, the process of winning. And I thought, what a great one-word fill-in at the end. Not just the process, but the process of winning.
I think that is fantastic for Magic Johnson because I think you start to hear about the process. It's easy to tune that out. The process of winning, I think, helps you like really sharpen the idea that the reason you go through this process is for the result at the end. This is how you get to the result that you are after. So really love that for Magic, who has done more winning in his life than, mostly any other human being on the planet. All right, let's get into the team's plan at kicker, which is a kind of an interesting cliffhanger from the end of their pre-bye time. And we'll get into what Dan Quinn wants to see from Jaden Daniels in the final 4 regular season games coming up next. But first, let's get an update on the latest in the world of women's sports, presented by Wawa. Chicken how you want it at Wawa with customizable crispy or roasted chicken sandwiches. back to the pick six in 30 seconds. Just looking up on TV, Anthony. And one thing that's pretty cool and one thing that's kind of unexpected. Monday Night Countdown right now on ESPN, and Ryan Clark is sitting up in a suite at AT&T Stadium, and he was doodling on the iPad, as they do on that show, except for it was projecting on the giant screen.
Yeah, I was watching that.
Which is pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
That's, I don't know how they wired all that, but that's imagine Apple AirPlay, insert code, and the code is to the giant TV at Jerry World. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
I doubt that's
Bluetooth,
done by Apple
perhaps?
TV. I don't know. It's something, but it worked. Good for them. The other thing is the roof is open. The roof is never open there, but the roof is open at AT&T Stadium for today.
I thought players complained last time it was open.
That's why I feel like they never open it. It's either always too hot or they're just like, wind,
Or the
whatever.
lights. They said the lights they couldn't see.
Maybe it's the night game, or because it's a
Yep.
night game.
Yep.
They're rolling with it. So the roof is open, which is kind of fun. I covered a lot of games in that stadium. I don't remember too many of them, if any, with the roof open, to be honest. But the thing is, the light and the sun coming in, that has nothing to do with the roof being open. That's the end. Like the way the light comes through the windows. For the 4 o'clock games for about a month. It's terrible. So good job, Jerry. Bunch of billions. Can't buy curtains. All right, let's get back to it quickly. The latter half of our pick six at 6. Dan Quinn speaking today on the Commanders' bonus practice day.
Number 4.
And he spoke about the Commanders' kicker situation. So you'll remember Austin Seibert went on IR. Zane Gonzalez missed a couple of kicks in the Commanders' win over the Titans. So, hey, Dan, what's the plan at kicker?
Yeah, we're staying where we're at as we finished up in the last game. So that's the plan as we're hitting it today. Zane's healthy and he's kicking.
Okay. And
the rosters that we'll have up, we'll talk about that coming in this week, but that will be easy. Now I get where you're going. You came at me so quickly with that, Nikki. I'm sorry. I wasn't ready for that. Yes, we're planning on Zane to be the kicker moving forward.
So he is, the question there was also, was he signed to the 53-man roster? And the answer is yes, which is in part because they couldn't call him up from the practice squad anymore. So you sign him to the roster. I mean, I guess you could always cut him again. But it is an interesting choice. But I also don't know that it's not the best choice. There's just not a lot of good kickers floating around. And I don't know, Dustin Hopkins had a horrible day for Cleveland. If he got cut, would you potentially bring him in and hope that he refines his form after a rough year in Cleveland? Maybe, but any kicker that's available or gets cut at this point of the season is because they're having a bad season. So Gonzalez was good a couple of weeks ago. He's been kicking well in practice. Hopefully for them, he can get it going in the final stretch run here.
Number 5.
Jaden Daniels, he's obviously got a really important December, and he was, I don't want to say he was hitting the rookie wall, but mentally, it's probably really nice for him to get this reset at this point in the season. This is more football than he's ever played in his life because that is the nature of being a rookie in the NFL, and these seasons are incredibly long. So what are the goals that Dan Quinn has for Jaden Daniels over the final month of this regular season?
Yeah, I think what I saw going into this season was a player that this is a real competitor, and he knew in those winning time moments, what that would look like and how he would respond. And so, learning as you're going, that's a big piece of playing quarterback. How does different people try to play in? How do you react to that, knowing that they're going to try to play a certain way? So the understanding of the system, he's nailed that. The competitive nature, he's nailed that. Now, when it comes time to they're trying to play us a certain way, how quickly can we react and play into what's needed for that moment? And I have a sense he'll absolutely nail that too, Scott. He's just that type of competitor. And what I did see in the last game was for him, full speed processes and decisions. And you had heard me talk about the importance of that practice time for him. And I really felt that heading into our last game, which was against Tennessee, but all the way through the practice week, all the reps, all the stuff that went into it, I felt that on game day. And so I expect, as you were trying to say, what am I looking to see from him? I expect to see more of that moving forward, now that we're back into, full swings of practice and playing.
Dan Quinn there on Jaden Daniels. And last but not least in our pick 6.
Number 6.
Situational football has been something the Commanders have mostly been good at. And I think the times that I don't want to say they've ever really been bad at it this season. Not anything really jumps to mind. Just maybe some different situations that I would have done differently if I was Dan Quinn. And sometimes they've worked out in his favor, and sometimes they've worked out, or they haven't. You take certain risks, or you don't take certain risks. But at the end of the day, I look at a team like Detroit and how they approach it with consistency of always being super aggressive, and it's part of their identity. And I do think that's something I would like to see from a coach who often talks about being bold and all that kind of stuff. So did Dan Quinn take note of what Dan Campbell did last Thursday night with that 4th down conversion late that set up the game-winning field goal for the Lions when he could have just kicked the game-winning field goal without said 4th down conversion, although it would have left more time on the clock for Green Bay?
Yeah, it's fun about that. We do that, and we go through a lot of those every week with Dave Gardy, and so there were some yesterday, in fact, with some of the games that we go through, but it is a fun part of that process to go through. When you're into that spot, there's also, how are you doing? What's the opponent look like? And so some of it is gut, to say, hey, what's the distance that you have to go? But it certainly paid off for them, on that particular one. So that's a good call.
It's a good call because it worked. I think the thing is, for a coach in those kind of situations, you have to know yourself and you have to know your team. And it's really more about knowing your team than yourself. You have to know your team, and you need to be good enough as a coach to know your team and then use that information correctly. For Dan Campbell, he knows that his offense is where his bread is buttered, and he wanted to go win the game with his offense, and I think that's correct. I think for Dan Quinn, he's a defensive coach who I think is perhaps going to evolve over the next... My guess is that he evolves over the next couple of years to rely more on Jaden Daniels, because he's just never had... I mean, Matt Ryan was awesome, but he's never had a quarterback like Jaden. He's never, as a head coach, and of course Atlanta was his one stop prior, and he's been a defensive guy, so it's not like he's been an offensive play caller in these situations, but he's gonna have to maximize this team, I would say, because he's gonna have to or what? He's gonna get fired? No. But to maximize, I think you have to lean into the fact that Jaden Daniels is going to be your best player if he's not already one of your best players, and that you should rely on him in as many key situations as you can. And so if it comes to 4th and short, especially if it's 4th and short versus a long field goal, relying on that guy is definitely the way to go. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And when we get back to the top story in sports today, with Juan Soto signing a 15-year, $765 million contract with the New York Mets. Is there any signs with this deal of some unhealthy things for the sport of baseball? Whether it's the length of the deal, whether it's the fact that Soto is on, who started obviously his career here in DC, is now on his 4th team in 4 years. Let's peel back the layers and go under the hood a little bit next on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Final half hour here. Anthony, we actually go to 7 o'clock tonight. It's been a while. We actually are going to 7 o'clock tonight.
I'm so pumped for it. So pumped.
I don't want to short the people of the show, and they just keep putting basketball games and all kinds of stuff here, knocking us off the air early.
Exactly.
We're here for you. We're going to do something else we haven't done, or we typically don't do. We're going to talk about some baseball.
No way.
Yeah, we're talk a little baseball. Because Juan Soto signed for $765 million. Those are the reports. It's not official yet, but it apparently is what is going to happen with he and the New York Mets. 15 years, which will take him until he's 40. $765. He does have a chance to opt out at some point. There are no deferrals in the deal. But there's an element of this that I think is interesting as baseball's contracts continue to become bigger and they become longer. And now what we have with Soto is a guy who is maybe the biggest star in the sport between his personality and his play. Is there someone bigger than Juan Soto? I think if like Bryce is in the World Series, he probably still has some, to an American audience at least, just because he's American. But like Juan is enormous, especially after playing with the Yankees last year. I mean, Aaron Judge still has such a big brand, but like Juan Soto, beloved, I think in a lot of spots, certainly here. But he's now on his fourth team in 4 years, and there used to be a time, and I promise I'm not actually trying to sound like an old man here. I'm going to at the start of this, and I'm just going to acknowledge that up front. But there used to be a time when like players didn't switch teams, and that made it easier as a fan to follow the sport. And I on a moral level, on a baseline for me, players having power is important. They're the ones with the skills, and so why wouldn't they be allowed to make decisions about their lives? Like, for instance, to take it even a step further and, not out, I guess, outside of baseball, outside of most professional men's sports, I don't think there should be drafts in any sports. Like, how ridiculous is it that you're the most coveted person in your entire industry and you're just told where to go to work? Imagine if that's how it worked coming out of college. Hey, you're a hotshot finance student. Now, you might even be limited by the fact that most of those companies are in New York, D.C., L.A., San Francisco, Chicago. But, like, whoever the market is, you get to go pick. Doesn't matter that you're fresh out of school. You're not like, you're fresh out of school. We're just going to assign you to Chicago. Well, I want to live in New York. Tough. Hey, all my family's in L.A. Sucks. You're stuck in D.C. That's how it works in pro sports. Drafts are stupid. Expansion drafts are extra stupid. It's one thing to do that to a kid coming out of college who hasn't, like, established a life. I mean, Kate Martin, former Iowa star who spent last year loving life as a rookie with the Las Vegas Aces, is trying to set down roots there, loving it. Hey, by the way, you live in Golden State now, as the Valkyries had their expansion draft on Friday. Like, stupid. And you're like, well, how else do you do it? The entire professional soccer is the most popular sport on the planet. They don't have drafts. Why? Because they have a market with multiple leagues overseas. And accordingly, the NWSL here in the U.S. just banned drafts, or banned their draft, both expansion and college player. So for Soto, like, imagine if he just got to pick where he wanted to go coming out. And to an extent, I guess he did because he's an international player. But then, okay, now he's chosen D.C. It'd be nice if he stayed a while for the purposes of, hey, this is for the fans ultimately. Like, professional sports exist because there are fans and those relationships. And so I don't think that the best players bouncing around is good for the sport. So how do you balance those things? The idea that a player should have choice. And when they sign a contract, they obviously, part of the contract is they can be traded, and it'd be malpractice if Mike Rizzo didn't make the trade that he did, and if the Padres, once they realized they were not going to be able to re-sign him, didn't make the trade that they did. You can't win that way. But I think that there should try to be as much of a balance as you can while also realizing that, like, if there's pressure to sign a 15-year contract, like, how bad is that contract going to be in the last? I mean, maybe Juan Soto can play till he's 45, but chances are years 37, 38, 39, and 40, maybe it just won't matter by then because who knows how much the top players of the day, and chances are Soto will opt out before then anyway. But it just, I don't know. I think it just feels wrong in a lot of ways, I guess is what I'm getting at, Anthony, is like, you just have this gut check where you're like, that's so much money for so long. And it's just so clearly with 4 teams in 4 years. And I'm not putting this on Soto, by the way. This is about the system in which he exists, not on the player or even necessarily Scott Boras, the agent. That it's so far removed from what we love about sports that I think it can be damaging to the sport. And we had this conversation a little bit with Shohei last year. Clinton came on the show and we talked about it, of how, man, these numbers are so gargantuan. Like, if you're a fan who's trying to buy 4 tickets and that's expensive, like, aren't you just turned off by it all? And I think this is another deal in that realm that endangers the long-term health of the sport, even if the amount of money that they're able to throw at this player might actually signify some short-term good health of the sport, because clearly the money's available.
Yeah, I mean, baseball is what I think a lot of I think what it's turned into is more so just like all about the money. Money trumps like everything though. Like, even I was joking with my friends. I posted on my story today a meme of there was a meme of Mike Tomlin walking into the stadium yesterday, drinking a coffee in a sweatsuit, and the caption read, "This is going to be me with my 8-year-old in, however many years." And in part, I was joking, but if my son really wants to play baseball, Craig, we're going the baseball route. Like, that is clearly where the money is. And, I mean, I'm not saying it's good for the sport, but it's sort of kind of taking over it. Just like NIL with college football, like, the money is talking. Like, I'm not saying it's good, but yeah, that's where it's trending.
Yeah, no, and like, this is, if someone's going to make the money, I would like it to be the labor, right? I would like the people who are most skilled and the reason that, like, the fans show up. Because, like, I will admit, I'm not in this way, like, anti-rich person, because I realize that it costs an incredible amount of money to run a professional sports team. So, like, I'm not blind to that.
Yeah.
But also, like, most of these rich people that own teams, like, how much money do you need? Like, it is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, that's a whole other, like, macroeconomic argument of the 1% and the top, just how much money is in the very top of American and really at this point global society versus the rest of us down here who are just, like, a lot of people going paycheck to paycheck and or trying to figure out how they're going to afford childcare or whatever. And I think it's important to remember that, like, those are the fans. That, like, if the players are making this much and the owners are still making that much, who's paying for that? And part of it is the correct answer is actually the advertisers and the TV money. Like, I had a YouTube comment the other day that was about, they got to remember the fans. That's who pays their salaries. I'm like, no, it's not. This was an NFL thing. Fox and CBS and ESPN pay those salaries. But indirectly, always, eventually, it is going to fall back on the consumer. And whether that's higher cable fees or higher fees for things like YouTube TV or whatever it is, like, we are paying for it in some way. And so I just think that's the thing is, like, these numbers, some of it's just inflation and everything costs more now or everything's more expensive and these numbers are growing over time. But I do think that there is just a disconnect of how gargantuan these numbers have gotten, how to go back to the 4 teams in 4 years thing, how upfront the market and the economics of the sport are versus the centering of the sport itself. And I think that in the long term is not good for any sport, and it has certainly happened in baseball. It's happening in these other sports too, is these NBA contracts are getting, I don't want to say ridiculous because the money's there, but the numbers are so big that it's hard not to ignore that and think about that if you're watching a random game like, oh, that dude makes $20 million, that dude makes $40 million. Oh, there's Dame Lillard, he makes 67 or whatever his number is. So I think that's the thing that just it's harder to just be like, yeah, no, I like basketball or I like baseball or I like football and just have that be the center. And somehow the richest league of it all, the NFL, probably actually does that in a way that's better than everyone else because it's really just the quarterbacks. But like when you watch Josh Allen, you're like, yeah, sure, pay that guy whatever. He's clearly worth it. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. When we get back, we wrap things up with real people, or real things real people said into real microphones. It's Hoffman Show. We're on Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Wrapping up here as we take you into BetMGM tonight, and then Westwood One's coverage of Monday Night Football coming up around 8 p.m. Anthony, what do we have on the show tomorrow? Any ideas?
We have
Any
Tischler.
plans? Oh, it's a Tischler Tuesday. Mitch said he would come by, post by, so we'll have him.
We have Tischler. We're going to revisit our 10 players that we highlighted before the season. I don't know if there will be Take Command, Take Tuesday.
There will be no Tape Tuesday because there's no tape. But we're doing a mailbag episode tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And so we could do mailbag leftovers. So if there's any questions that don't make the Take Command mailbag, we could do a leftover segment.
Okay.
So we could answer them. We could make Anthony try to be Logan. No?
Yeah, I need to see these questions beforehand. I got to prep myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably not. We did get some good ones. If you want to get a last-minute question in, hoffmanshow.com/contact is where you go. Or just hit the contact tab. I don't know if /contact works. I think it does. But go to hoffmanshow.com and check that out. And submit your question. Or you can send me a DM on Instagram at hoffman.sports. All right, so that's tomorrow on the show. Anything else that we normally do on Tuesdays? Oh, our tiers.
Oh, yeah, tiers. Definitely got to get the tiers because we got to add the Titans to what is
actual
it?
hell.
Oh, actual hell. Yep.
Yeah, there's no chance in hell, and then there's actual hell.
Yeah.
And the Titans.
We have 3 teams down there now.
Yeah, because the Jets and Giants sure didn't earn their way out. In fact, they probably cemented themselves. Yeah. They tried to. It's like they both sprinted towards the door and like, I got to get out of here. And then they tripped and fell.
Yeah.
And just right on their face.
Yep.
As the Devils sit back and laugh. And then shook Patrick Mahomes' hand. And there it was. All right. Anything else that we need to cover on the housekeeping front before we get to real things, real people said, in real microphones?
No.
Okay. Well, then it's time for real things, real people said, into real microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5-11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
All right, we love a good weird coach post-game moment. And I haven't heard this yet. I just saw it in the folder, and it's labeled very specifically. Anthony, I started to talk about it, and you had a big smile that came on your face.
Because it's funny.
Mike Brown, Kings head coach, took an interesting approach to getting his message across in his post-game press conference after a win this weekend.
We just need to be methodical by stacking or playing the right way, possession after 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 possession.
Mike, I'm going to pause you there to say, I think we got it, but go ahead.
After possession 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 after possession.
There's like 100 possessions in an NBA game. How many are we going here?
After possession after possession after possession after possession after possession after possession after possession. You guys got what I'm saying, right? We just need to be methodical by stacking or.
I thought you were about to replay the guy.
Well, you accidentally looks like you copied it twice into the bite.
Oh,
so,
I did? Oh.
Yeah. I was like, the bite started over. I didn't start it over.
Oh.
How many was that, Anthony? You were counting.
I lost count.
Oh.
1, 2, 3, 4 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
That's 28.
26 because I got a -2.
Oh, well, we literally ran out of show.